this morning. Carnation Instant Bitch?
Hello and welcome to this part of the pond, where it's the bullfrog still without the newt. If he was here, he'll be behind that camera saying face reveal at 100,000 subscribers. So please like, share, and subscribe. And while you're down there, go into the comments section. That'll help us a bit. And those of you that are passing through the internet, you're curious what we're doing? We are looking for Disney's greatest villain. We're basically looking for this.
You could have just let me go, and perhaps I would have spared you.
But in Disney form. And this video will be different than all of our other videos. Why? While editing, I lost an entire third of this video.
Oh, that's stupid! Really stupid.
So as you're gonna watch more of this video, you're gonna see the state of my sunburn. But more importantly, while editing, I noticed things I didn't notice before. And these things became far more interesting when analyzing the Queen of Hearts. So you're going to get this kind of revelation. And while filming, when I was reading my notes and eager to talk to you, saying those words out loud led me to a different route than I had planned. And I started to look at words in a different light and see the presentation a whole lot more. This video is going to be far more unique than anything.
Know that this is the strangest thing I've ever done!
And for our longtime subscribers that have been following this quest, I'm going to tell you something. Of all the Disney videos, 5 have been my personal favorites. This is one of them. And I hope you enjoy and find things just as interesting as I did. So grab your cups, and I hope you enjoy this chaotic tea time as we go into the Queen of Hearts.
Important thing our society needs.
That would be harsher punishment for parole violators, Stan. And world peace.
Now we begin with design. And with design, with the Queen of Hearts, I just want to, she's very kind of like me in the weight class. That she looks better on that. This is about the design, not her health, and her weight class kind of shows off how wealthy she is. After all, she's a queen, and with medieval queens and the medieval age, even though this is Alice in Wonderland, it's trying to show off how, well, comfortable she is with her seat of power. If you're not fat, you're not wealthy. If you're not wealthy, you're not exactly considered a good queen in the sense of your kingdom. And she's a plump one. I just love food too much. Her excuse is way better than mine. And speaking of her excuse, she wears it well. Not the fat, that dress. I am not a fashionista. I know squat nothing when it comes to clothes. I mean, take a look. I have a green logo while I'm doing a green screen. I'm not that smart. But what I do know is this. She wears it good. She may be a little simple with her design, with that plumpness and that pretty neat dress. But I think what really helps her stand out in design is her face, mainly her mouth. Because what the animations did with the mouth, it's all about more like her projecting her voice and her just letting out her anger, her roars. And that gives her more of a connection with her voice actress. And before we go more into that, I want to point out something very interesting about the Queen of Hearts. We all point out she's a rotund woman, and also that she is, well, mad. But the thing I want to point out that I find I feel like not that many people would like to mention is her femininity with her design.
You gotta bat your eyes like this. You gotta pucker up your lips like this.
She has the eyes and the lips. Take a look at this for a few moments, how they portray her mouth. She has those moments, and it's kind of show off her femininity. And I like that. I think it's very, kind of interesting that someone with this design has these subtle moments of she's very feminine and kind of fragile. But that fragility is very small, is lost in that of her design. She is meant to be powerful. And speaking of power, let's go more into her voice now. And she is voiced by Verna Felton! Oh, crap. Whenever we analyze the performance of Verna Felton, unpredicted things tend to happen. And I get a little nuts. And the fact this is the last time we're going to analyze her performance, I know the rules of horror films. The last one is when the villain is at their strongest and at their most deadly. I cannot guarantee anything anymore. We may go off script, off of my notes, into a deeper analysis that leads me to madness. And we are analyzing the Queen of Hearts, who sets the rules for Wonderland, which is nothing more than madness. We have no idea what's gonna happen now. Pray for me. And pray for the sanity that's gonna happen on this channel. And Verna Felton, please, don't kill us. I'm by myself. No Newt. Crap. Okay, Verna Felton's performance. We are not going to be biased by her ghost. We are going to be brutally honest, but let's begin with the cons first. The Queen of Hearts is close to the vocal performance of the matriarch. I'm not saying they're cut and paste. No, they are similar. But the Queen of Hearts is more arrogant than the matriarch. But they both have that uppity classness to it. But the Queen of Hearts has that more. They have the same sound, but the levels of that arrogance and poshness was ramped up to 11 with the performance of the Queen of Hearts. So she's more of an individual. And interesting, I want to point out, there's hints of Verna Felton embracing Lady Tremaine. I mean, take a look. You see? She understands that smugness of the Lady Tremaine will fit with the Queen of Hearts, but the Queen of Hearts does it more. Things are going right for me. She used it for that. Those are the cons. The biggest, coolest, amazing thing about Verna's performance is with the Queen of Hearts' mouth. When she is gonna yell, when she's gonna bellow and show off that madness of rage, her loudness fits with that huge mouth. It is like bellowing a foghorn. And she just lets out this raw anger. But there's anger and then there's anger. This is what the Queen's mouth is designed for. And when she is just unleashed, that inner Hulk, she has this more like a bull-like feel. There's something very blunt about it. And with her hair all crazed up, kind of going to Super Saiyan Goku, in a way. And that performance really helps her be one of a kind. And it adds to that madness. And again, with that big mouth design and Verna Felton being so loud, it feels like they are meant to be. And it's really cool. I like it like that. And with the performance of Verna Felton and the animators and the writers, all three making the Queen of Hearts I give it a 3 out of 4. It helps the villains become far more iconic. And how can we analyze presence and judge it? We have this to help us. But this is Wonderland, and I'm thinking, let's kind of embrace Wonderland and start with history. Because Wonderland is based off of Lewis Carroll's Alice in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass. It comes from the first book, Alice in Wonderland. So the Queen of Hearts is a very old character, and Walt Disney is very unique with Alice in Wonderland as a property. For out of every story Walt Disney tried to put on screen, Alice in Wonderland is the one where he did his best to follow the book. The only other time he did that was with Mary Poppins. Everything else, they kept to the source material, but not as much. But Alice in Wonderland, they tried. And with Alice in Wonderland, you gotta remember, his first time dealing with that was in 1921 to 1927. These were all silent film. Walt Disney understood Wonderland and the mechanics of Wonderland way before this movie came out. And when you look at this movie and you read the book, you could see how close he kept to the source material to follow the nonsense and the illogical form of it. But Alice in Wonderland doesn't really have a plot. And to help Alice in Wonderland to have a plot, he kind of made her into Ulysses from Homer's Odyssey, where she's traveling from point to point to point, dealing with the illogical nonsense of Wonderland from the book. And the story is trying to show off, be careful what you wish for. How does the Queen enter in all this? Well, the Queen is one of the most iconic characters from Lewis Carroll's book. And the movie has all the iconic characters, but the Queen of Hearts has one of the most iconic lines. And this is building up to the promise of what the Queen of Hearts is gonna be. She has to be nuts. She has to be violent with her words and with her presentation of her words. So they have to fulfill all of this. The history and the promise. And right here, we're going to talk about the song that builds up to us meeting the Queen for the first time. This is not her intro yet, but this is when we first see her on screen. And that is through the song, Who's Been Painting My Roses Red.
The wicked should be made brief, for the rest of us death will be a relief.
But that song isn't really like, of a song. It's more sing-talking. She doesn't really sing. It's all about sing-talk. And it's her just, who's been painting my roses red? Who dares defile my garden, so you lose your head? With that song, it kind of fulfills the promise that she's going to be what she is from the book. You're going to lose your head. But her introduction of her in the movie is way before this. I mean, the Cheshire Cat leads Alice to the Queen of Hearts.
I prefer the short cut.
But that is not when we first got introduced to the Queen of Hearts. The introduction is one of the most important things to build up the villain. But Walt Disney, knowing that the movie needs to be a little bit more maddening, did something very interesting. The Queen is introduced during the tea party. You heard me. And what's my evidence? The White Rabbit. I didn't notice this until I was editing, because the White Rabbit before the tea party is always wearing a waistcoat. But there at the tea party, he is wearing his costume that represents the Queen. So the song, I'm late, very, very important date by the White Rabbit, is kind of foreshadowing why it's so important that he should not be late.
I lose my temper, you lose your head. Understand?
That is to introduce the Queen. Because when we first see her, look who's there doing it.
Imperial Highness, Her Grace, Her Excellency, Her Royal Majesty, Queen of Hearts.
But we see that build-up here at the tea party. He's wearing that regalia. He is shouting, "Crap, I'm late. I don't have the time. I need to get going." That's all for the Queen. Alice stays at the tea party. It's because of the White Rabbit. He's the reason why she stays. But when he's there, the Mad Hatter and the Mark Hare get even more nuts. And that's where things go too crazy. It leads to destruction. And Alice going, "Okay, I'm done. This is just too much." That tea party almost feels like foreshadowing the trial. Why? Things got worse when the Mad Hatter and the Hare interact with the White Rabbit. And in the trial, things got a whole lot worse when the Mark Hare and the Mad Hatter interact with the Queen. How they interact with the Queen and how they present and talk to her fuels the Queen's illogical nonsense. You could say this is looking too much into it. After all, Alice in Wonderland is meant to be nonsense at its best. And the movie shows that. And yeah, it does, but at the same time, it feels like there's a build-up to it. And we have yet to touch the environment and threat. Well, threat, let's get that out of the way, because that's the most easy and logical thing about the Queen's presence. Is she a threat? This says it. It's a threat that is fulfilled. It hangs over Alice throughout their interactions. So, yes, the Queen is a threat. I find this one very interesting because the Cheshire Cat kind of states of what the Queen's environment is.
Always here, you see, are the Queen's way.
I'm trying to find my way home.
Your way? Always here on my way. Always on
Your ways, Your Majesty.
Wonderland makes no sense. It's to not make logic happen, and it's not to be right. It doesn't make sense. Wonderland is meant to follow the Queen's rules, and that list I just laid out, the Queen is responsible for that whole list. I feel like the Queen almost has a tie to Wonderland like Peter Pan does with Neverland. Peter Pan is for a child that will never grow up. Is that because of who he is, or is it because of his ties to Neverland? But the Wonderland has always meant to be illogical. So did illogical create the Queen, or did the Queen create Wonderland to be illogical? Sense is against the laws. It's all meant to be nonsense. I mean, look at the trial.
sentence first, verdict afterward.
See what I mean? There's so much more happening with the Queen in the movie. The movie is not to make sense. It's just Homer's Odyssey through Wonderland. Is Wonderland the Queen, or is the Queen Wonderland? Is she a resident, or kind of like a goddess?
Wow, impressive.
Okay, this environmental question is nuts. And it's gotten too crazy here. Let's try to finish our presents. And before we can finish it all the way, we need to do her time. That's right. I do my best to clock in all the times for all the Disney villains and how long they're on screen. Why? Well, it's for the free-for-all. When you see at the end of this list, that's not a tier list. When we are done with those groups, we're going to compare each and every one of these villains and find out their numbers. And where are they on the list of villains, and what are they ranked? To help us, we record their times. And for that, I go to this book. It's not the Notebook, but it's in here. And the Queen's time is, estimatedly, 5 minutes and 51 seconds. Interesting. But now, what would we number her? There's a lot going on.
Well, duh.
And her presence is in the books and in this movie. And it's far more deeper than I thought possible. And she still has all of that, and also very memorable. Those things make her memorable. There's far more in there, though, so I think I'm giving her a 4. Agree? Disagree? Go down in the comments. I want to know if I looked too much into it or not. You may change her number, but until then, I'm giving her a 4.
Hey, are you crazy, you dumb?
Does the Queen have power? Does the Queen have power? Yes.
Well, duh.
She has the absolute loyalty of the cards. She can send 3 to death and they all sing and chant. But if it's a red card, they still kill him. They would rather behead one of their own than disobey the Queen. Yeah, if that's not loyalty, I don't know what is.
Duh.
The fact that she is the Queen and the rules of Wonderland she makes.
Always on your ways, Your Majesty.
Yes, my child.
The rules of Wonderland is to be illogical, and to be illogical doesn't make sense. She built that system, and the system works. What?
What the hell is that?
Yeah, she's responsible for that level of power too. And if you want to make things even more interesting, with her power is her physique.
You serious?
She weighs enough to cause earthquakes when she falls, but she has the movement and grace of a queen. She doesn't have super speed, but she's fast. She's not super strong, but yet she's strong enough to pull a rosebush with one hand. And she can topple her entire army with her weight. But think about that. A good level of strength, a good level of mobility with a heavy weight right behind it. If she puts in some training, she could be the bane of boxers everywhere. I bet no one's thought of that.
I see.
So, political power, an army, the installation of madness, or being the birth of madness, being born from madness, and the fact that she has the physical prowess to be a physical power if she wants to. When it comes to power, I just can't help but notice that she has a certain level of intelligence that's higher than everyone else in Wonderland, 'cause she can see that Alice is a girl. No one else can.
Certainly isn't a heart. Do you suppose it's a club?
Realize that after editing and such, and I find that kind of interesting.
Why, it's a little girl.
Huh. She's a 4.
This is personal.
With henchmen, it's about balance. You can't be too loyal to the point that you're forgettable, but yet you need to be independent to work outside of your master. But if you work too far outside, it could lead to rebellion. You need...
Perfectly balanced, this whole thing should be.
And does the Queen have that balance with her henchmen? Well, we kind of went over in power that, well, the absolute loyalty of the cards. But part of her henchmen is the king.
And a king.
And he's presented almost like, well, one of those toy Chihuahua dogs that models have. They're just nothing more than an ornament. The queen just treats him like a pet. I mean, take a look how she congratulates him.
Very well, then.
The king is like that. He's nothing more than an ornament to the queen. He thinks he has power when he doesn't. Yeah, the king... He's the one character out of Wonderland that can take the queen's yelling. He quivers in fear, but yet he's willing to stand up when he can. And the queen praises him for it.
Very well, then.
And when the queen is, well, terrified of an Alice that is a mile tall, the king stands his ground.
42. All persons more than a mile high must leave the court immediately. I am not a mile high, and I'm not leaving.
So she has the loyalty of the cards, but the king shows that he's willing to be independent, but she rewards him for it. I think we're getting close to balance, but the king is too weak to do that much. And the cards, well, they're simple. They're cards you can easily... I mean, look what Alice can do to them. And she's a 10-year-old girl.
You really took a beating from a little girl.
But you gotta go give credit where credit's due. I mean, you're in charge of an entire army, and you invented the laws of Wonderland. That's power. We're talking henchmen. But the laws of Wonderland does lead to henchmen, though. The White Rabbit is technically a henchman. He's the bailiff, he's her announcer, and he gives Alice kind of a glare for when she embarrassed the queen to being angry. White Rabbit is also a henchman.
Yes.
Does nothing for her, and he's probably considered as an average citizen of Wonderland. If an average citizen of Wonderland is willing to uphold the queen, then wouldn't that make Wonderland part of her henchmen who follow her gladly? I mean, when you look at the circle scene, she's not leading it, but she's following it and a part of it. And she's glad for it. Wonderland, the people of Wonderland are her henchmen. I mean, when she's chasing Alice, the Mark Hare and the Mad Hatter stall her. During the chase scene, she goes to the blue caterpillar, and the caterpillar stalls her. She's fleeing Wonderland, and gravity starts defying logic. When Alice looks back at the race, you see the queen and all the denizens of Wonderland chasing her. We have loyalty, but yet independence through the madness. I didn't plan on this, but the more you think about it, at that last third, it shows off the citizens of Wonderland are hers. She rules a world, an entire country that can do that.
Well, duh.
I think her henchman is a 4.
It's like seeing their names in print. I'll run on these tomorrow. Adjourned?
I'm scared. Talk about the easy stuff. It seems more sane. What's the easy stuff? She beheads 4 people. The ace, the deuce, the 3, and the red heart. 4 dead. Okay, there's a kill count. The best way to show the levels of villainy in Wonderland is actually through Alice's emotions. And when Alice is already within minutes of meeting the queen, Alice immediately assumes her head is going to be next on the chopping block. Literally. I mean, take a look at it. Alice is already emoting fear immediately. And during the trial of Alice, in the beginning, she's just exhausted by the crazy. She's kind of showing she's kind of had enough. But when she gets that confidence of a mile, she feels like she can do everything. But when she's back to her normal height and the queen is gushing on, "What did you say?" Alice is terrified. And when we have Alice at the door, she is pleading for her to wake up. So we have fear of losing your head, getting exhausted by the ridiculousness of it. This is no longer fun, and it's gone to a nightmare. The queen has given Alice these emotions. And why is it that Alice's emotions should be the best Richter scale of the villainy? Think about this for a moment. But after the Mad Hatter and the March Hare, she was starting to get a little exhausted. She wanted home. But when the Cheshire Cat introduced her to the Queen, she went from wanting home to, "This is a nightmare. I want out."
Queen, I simply must get out.
The insane asylum was too much.
Sentence first, verdict afterwards.
But that just isn't the way.
It's hard to understand it. Alice's emotions can be a good way to help us gagger it. And those emotions are kind of, well, the Queen is pretty high in this. At the same time, I want to point out the Queen is responsible for the madness, the environment of Wonderland. And the fact that the citizens... No, hold on. She makes the laws of Wonderland. Wonderland is what it is because of her, which makes her responsible for Wonderland. But there's one character of Wonderland that makes the Queen's emotions go higher than normal, and that is the Cheshire Cat. The Cheshire Cat made the Queen fall into her greatest form of madness.
Well, she simply said that you're a fat, pompous, bad-tempered old tyrant.
The Cheshire Cat made the madness far more maddening. And all of Wonderland was Wonderland out to destroy Alice's sanity. So a rebel that pushed the Queen over her edge made the Queen far more dangerous and made Wonderland bend to the Queen's will. Alice's emotions went to a scarier place for Alice. Wonderland went far more madder when the Cheshire Cat pushed the Queen. And the Queen folded Wonderland more to her will of catching Alice. But it's all a dream. But the dream was too nuts and terrifying, it became a nightmare. And that was because the Queen folded to her emotions that were pushed by the cat. The cat is a villain.
Ladies and gentlemen,
that's a future video. Not coming up next, but that's a future video. But the Queen turned the dream into a nightmare. So scary, Alice forced herself to wake up. I would rather wake up and deal with a nightmare. And that nightmare is because of a character. I have my notes pointing out one thing, but saying it out loud and looking at it and analyzing it, maybe this is madness talking, but I think the Queen of Hearts is a low red. Do you agree? Disagree? Put it in the comments section, really, because I think it adds up well. Until next time, this is the Bullfrog signing out. This turned out weirder than I thought.
Impressive.
Okay, those of you who are still here, and you're curious to know what my other favorite 5 were, again, I've talked about this video. And the other ones have been Bambi's Hunters, Honest John from Pinocchio, the Rat from Lady and the Tramp, giving the highlights of Captain Hook. This is so far. We still have a whole lot more to go through.